will attract more population back.
Jessie Norris is one of our guests in this segment. Jessie, good morning. Thanks for coming in. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Waking up still.
Yeah, good for you. And you have a partner coming in here in a moment, I
do,
suppose, right?
any minute. Yeah, absolutely.
And who would that be?
That is Greg Cogle. He is the board member of the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia. So
Okay.
he's been a huge support through all of this.
And this is about the bottling plant in Middleway. You are part of Project Middleway and another organization as well, correct?
Yeah, so Protect Middleway, and I am the president of the Middleway Conservancy as well.
Okay.
So.
And what are your concerns about this plant in Jefferson County? What is the latest on it, by the way? I haven't heard much news in the last month on it.
Well, there's good reason. We had the last concept plan meeting. It was actually postponed until February 11th, so it's been a little quiet. There have been a couple of meetings in between now and then, but in terms of updates, we did have a meeting with the Historic Landmarks Commission in Jefferson County where they unanimously agreed to recommend denying this plan, asking the Planning Commission to deny this plan due to how much it can impact the really just the integrity of the historic village. And Sidewinder did have their own event actually at the exact same time as that Historical Landmarks Commission meeting too. So I was able to kind of split my time and attend both.
Okay. What are your chief concerns?
Mostly, well, honestly, this project manages to hit a lot of different pain points. As someone who is a huge fan of history, it definitely concerns me that it could absolutely destroy Middleway. And I mean, once those things are gone, they're gone. You can't bring them back. Historical homes are notoriously hard to repair, especially because the people who are qualified to do it it's a dying art, really. And so it's hard to find people to repair it. And I mean, the history is one thing. There's the moral wetlands that are completely unique to this area and very rare. There's the toxic plume under the 3M plant. There's the traffic. I mean, it's just a litany of reasons why it's just bad news. Just bad news.
So what's the alternative? I mean, there's the valuable piece of property. It's huge. For years, a lot of trucks went through exactly the place where you don't want trucks going now. Just playing devil's advocate here.
Sure.
So we know what you don't want. What's okay? What's an alternative?
No, that's a great question. And just to, I love a devil's advocate. I mean, even so with the 3M plant, the amount of trucks going in and out of there were a small fraction, and they were carrying a lot lighter loads as well. So it's really not even apples to apples with what 3M Kodak was doing on that property versus what is being proposed. And then in terms of like what could be done, honestly, that's something that I would love for Sidewinder to try and meet with any of the groups and really discuss and understand what could be possible with that village. I think they were told they have water in this big piece of property, and then they sat down and noodled around what they could do with it and came up with a bottling plant. And I just don't know that was the best option. So, I mean, I think that's where they really need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what some options are, and then see what they can do to mitigate a lot of the concerns the community is having. And then whatever can check off the most boxes, if not, again,
like what?
Like what?
John asked, like, what do you think would be an appropriate use of that parcel?
Well, a lot of people have thrown out different ideas. Some people have said to protect the land if possible. Obviously, a lot of key moments of the Battle of Smithfield Crossing from the Civil War happened there. But I'm not personally for or against it, but people have thrown out things like data centers or other different types of plants that don't require as much traffic or resources.
So that's the like data centers, or could it be built on residential?
Potentially parts of it, but a lot of it
That
from
toxic plume thing could be a problem.
yeah, and honestly,
that's what I
even
was
the
asking.
soil is an issue too. So when they go to build this facility, should they get to that point, I mean, they're going to have special people there to watch the employees moving the soil around and all kinds of stuff because of the toxicity of it.
So I don't know much about toxic plumes. So is there a pocket that's captured? Is it encapsulated somehow with a containment system like they do at landfills?
Well, the containment system is simply just the way that our aquifers are in this area, which is karst, and so it's essentially, from what I understand, trapped inside of a pocket, and it's partially contained from what we can see in the records, and so they've put monitoring wells around it to try and see whether it's moving or not, previous owners of this property. But in reality, it's even just having the monitoring wells there isn't super sufficient, because karst kind of just goes all over the place, up and down, all different kinds of, it's a highway at different levels. And so to have a monitoring well here, like that toxic plume could go right underneath
Sure.
there and you totally miss it. And now it's in the village or Berkeley County, and who knows. So, and especially with that huge drawdown of water, a lot of movement could happen.
So it's not a man-made capture. It was just left over from a previous use.
Yeah, it's from the 3M Kodak plant when they were there. So it contains 2 toxic chemicals, and I'm the history counterpart of Protect Middleway. So there are people here in our team that could speak a lot more intelligently about it. But yes, it is essentially what we've seen from DEP records as partially contained, and so it's, as far as we can tell, it hasn't moved, but there's just really not been enough studying to know whether it is. And even the people who owned it at the time couldn't even afford or fathom trying to even do a study to see if there was a way to determine if it had moved at all.
I want to, since you're into history, isn't there a Middleway witch urban tale? Is it witch or is it more
It's
than
a
one?
wizard, which
Wizard.
is the
Okay.
male version of a witch. Now you're talking my stuff. You had me uneasy there about the water and stuff. But yeah, so it's the legend of Wizard Clip, and it is, as far as we can tell, the oldest, or it's the first known poltergeist in America.
Or people were drinking the water. from the
Well,
plume.
yeah, well, different timing, a couple of 100 years off, but yeah, it's a very great story. I highly recommend people looking into it if you want to find something where there's just a lot of recorded encounters with the spirits. So.
Greg Cogle is also here from the Preservation Alliance of West Virginia. Greg, what is your interest here?
Well, our interest is we're the statewide nonprofit preservation group that is dedicated to saving, protecting, and celebrating great historic places in the state. We have board members all throughout the state, preservation leaders who are aligned with us. And when we heard about this, and I live just right up the road. I live in Shepherdstown. I went down to Middleway, and as I said to Jessie, I've driven through here a lot of times, but I've never really taken the time to sort of walk around and understand this place. It's a very special historic place. And I think the point here is that it deserves more than this proposal is presenting. The significant amount of traffic that would go through the village, the pipeline through the heart of the village by historic houses and buildings that are over 200 years old, archaeological resources, cemeteries. It deserves better than that. So we became very concerned. We don't take it lightly to put a property on our most endangered list, but we felt that this rose to that level. We're communicating this statewide. This is not just an issue for the Panhandle, because Middleway is a state historic treasure, and it deserves better than this proposal is providing. This is an ill-conceived proposal of this magnitude.
Let me ask you a question, because 3M and Kodak were there years ago. What is different about it now than it was years ago when 3M and Kodak were there in regards to the urgency to preserve Middleway today versus 20 years ago?
Well, I don't know exactly when the 3M plant was built, but I think the difference is, as Jessie said, it's just the magnitude, the scale of the operation. This is just so much more, and it's going to directly impact the village in a way that I don't think the 3M plant ever did. And then there are the water issues. This is a living, breathing community. That's the other thing that's so special about it. People for 300 years have been loving, protecting, and cherishing these historic buildings. If you haven't been there, I urge you to go out and walk around. It's a really very special place. There's no other place like it in West Virginia.
What steps on the route that you're taking do you need to get through to further your cause here?
Well, we definitely need people to write into the Planning Commission a week before the February 11th meeting. It's going to be a public workshop for the concept plan, and people can speak for 3 minutes. It's actually going to be at Jefferson High School. They had to find a bigger venue because we had over 150 people show up for the first one with only a week or so notice for most of them, and so I appreciate the accommodation for a larger venue. And honestly, if you're okay with me throwing it back to the 3M question,
Sure.
The difference I think between 3M and this is Middleway's experienced 3M before, and even though I was actually digging through some of the archives through the Conservancy, and one of the things that 3M had put in the newspaper was that they were following all of the state and local regulations. And what has that left us with? A toxic plume, a brown field, all kinds of mess. And so, 3M plant came in, it did what it did, and then it left us with a brown field in this situation. And so, I think Middleway and Jefferson County as a whole is very concerned and kind of just very cautionary or very cautioned about having something else come in here and deplete or ruin any more of our resources.
Well, I think it's important to note that until 1976, until 1976, it was perfectly legal to throw hazardous waste into the backyard.
Right.
That's the Resource Conservation Recovery Act was passed in 76.
That's hard to believe.
Right.
It is hard to believe, and that's where Superfund came from, and so but it's only been since 1976 that we've started caring about this stuff. So we can't dump too hard on a company that built the plant in 1961.
Right.
And is that huge factory still there?
It is. It's from what I understand, getting a little dilapidated, but yes, it is still there.
So when we, when we talk about the special nature of the town, there is a big honkin' factory there.
Yes.
That really doesn't lend itself to be a winery or something bucolic. So when we talk about developing it, somebody has bought this place and they want to turn it into something that's going to be industrial. So have there been discussions among groups such as yours as to accepting the inevitability that something's going here and that this is what we'd like it to look like? We know what we don't want it to be.
Right. And yes, we have, we understand that it's zoned industrial commercial. Something's going to have to go in there. So we've definitely accepted that. But, I think it would have been nice for them to have come and really taken a pulse of the community to try and understand what could work. Because, even as someone who has talked to a lot of people who work in logistics, they are not even sure what company would be willing to come in and have trucks go through this historic village and up there and be their end user. So, I think they've gotten themselves into quite a pickle here trying to figure out what to even use that land for. And so it's passed hands a lot of times, and I understand that they are trying to recoup money from several ventures ago and whatnot, but I think there's smarter ideas that could still get them what they needed and kind of make everybody mostly happy.
Greg, do you have a track record you can cite of other causes you've gotten involved in and stopped something from going in that people didn't want to have go in and get historic charter status for a town?
Well, there are probably a couple of good examples that I could cite here in the Panhandle. About 22, 23 years ago, the Jefferson County Commission was going to demolish the old jail in Charlestown. Incredibly historic building. And local citizens got in touch with the Preservation Alliance. We put it on our most endangered list, worked with local citizens, and saved the building. Now it's a post office. Another one is in Berkeley Springs, the old train depot. I actually heard from somebody there last week that our placing that depot on the most endangered list about 15 years ago really helped save it, because it brought to the public, this is something we're saving. It is of statewide interest. and now it's been preserved. So yeah, I mean, we use this list as a bully pulpit to bring to people's attentions, and hopefully also local leaders and public agencies. That's, I think, one of the strongest things we do.
Is there a common thread in the successes that you've had?
I think the common thread is that citizens care. One of the things that we've been so impressed with in Middleway is the way that the people, the local people who live there, have come together to save this place. And I think that's the common thread in all of these situations. Yeah, I mean, we can broadcast statewide that something is endangered, but unless you have local citizens who are advocating and working hard, and that's what's happening in Middleway. It's really pretty impressive. I hope you all know that we have an advocacy event on Friday evening. We hope you'll come at 5 p.m. at the Grace Episcopal Church, where all of our partner organizations are going to be there talking about the different perspectives of saving this place. We also have music. We have a local woman who wrote a fight song for Middleway, and she'll be singing that as well. So come on out.
Does your alliance, would they offer the service of putting it out for public opinion on how best or what best use of a historical property, or what you deem as a historical property?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we do, we convene people who understand how to do development around historic places. So sure, we do that. We have conferences. We have technical assistance that we provide, and we know people around the state who have done good work. So sure.
What about buying the properties and placing them in some sort of protective trust? Is that something that your alliance engages in?
You know, we're a small organization. The best thing we do is advocacy and bringing people together and technical assistance, but we don't really have the resources to do that.
But they are out there.
They are out there.
What do you mean?
There are places out there and organizations out there that can do things.
Oh,
like
okay,
that.
okay.
Yes.
You mentioned Sidewinder earlier. We met with Sidewinder in studio. Seemed like nice enough folks, by the way. Have you had any success conveying directly to them your concerns and solutions?
Well, before I even knew that a bottling plant was in the works, I had reached out to them several times because the Conservancy does cleanup days, and there was a lot of trash on the corner near the Opekian of their property, and I also know property rights, and so I didn't want to step on it in trespassing, so I didn't want to step on their property, especially with high schoolers, to help clean up. And after calling and emailing and everything for almost a year or so, I never heard anything. And then I got the newspaper and then a bunch of calls on Sunday when right before this the first concept plan meeting was going to happen. So I have reached out to them, and still to this day have not heard anything from them, from either the Protect Middleway or the Middleway Conservancy, about any care for the history at all, or really just trying to work with the community. That was just the meeting that they had on a couple of Wednesdays ago, and that was about it. And I mean, it was okay.
About 30 seconds left. Go ahead and promote your next date that you've got coming up. You want to rally people around.
Yeah, sure. So tomorrow we do have an advocacy event at 5 p.m. in Middleway at Grace Episcopal Church. But most importantly, please come to the public workshop on February 11th at 7 p.m. at Jefferson High School.
Jessie and Greg, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Best of luck to you as you continue your pursuit here.
Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
This is Talk Radio, WRI Martinsburg and TV 10. We are back with more in just a moment. This segment of the show today brought to you by the Berkeley County Health Department's Quick Response Team and by Parsons Ford. We became number one by making you number one first at Parsons.
You should